use the restroom, they're right to the door.
I believe so, yes. Maybe Chris's.
I don't want to start about the lawsuit.
You can present it when you want to. Unless you're not here.
Do you want to do it?
Michelle, can you do the roll call?
Just turn.
You totally didn't do it.
It is totally, why did you do that? You're the one who's on that.
Right.
Which is why.
Right.
But it's just kind of, you're gonna have to, but you gotta get it.
Right.
That's why I'm happy to do it at some point.
Yeah.
But after.
I'd like to know what I'm doing before I jump in and decide. I'm not going to develop.
Right.
This is, and I can see the contention is.
There she is.
Everybody's appropriate. Right? That's PAU.
But one member of the public is in the restroom. Folks, to keep it open, Michelle, can you do the roll call?
Yes. Nilam Arya. Here. Ira Sharp.
Here.
Kathy Lang. David Jackson.
Here.
Katie, is it Hagan or Hazen? Hazen. Hazen. Samir Bora.
Here.
Fu Shaoqian. Yeah, did I say it correct? Yes, Fu Shao. Yeah.
Okay, now would you join me in the pledge of allegiance? And in regard, ready to begin.
I pledge allegiance to the flag of the United States of America and to the republic for which it stands, one nation, under God, indivisible, with liberty and justice for all.
Thank you all for being here. At this point in time, are there any, Michelle, do you have any switches slips for public comments? And we're against this one now right now?
Is that okay?
Sure.
If we have one other person that's running late, is that?
We prefer to take public comments during the public comment session. You know how late that person can be?
We can do
Yeah, we prefer to take the public comments in the public comment section. You go to the committee whether or not they want to entertain public comments after the public comment section.
Yeah, I move to allow people, if they're here by,
So I'll tell you what, rather than do a motion,
yeah.
give me a show of hands, how many people are okay with it? That's enough, okay, as long as they're not leaving, yeah, okay. We're in public comment, so wherever you want to, maybe they come to the table here, wherever you'd like to speak from.
Here we are at another meeting. My name is Kelly Huggins. We appreciate the community service and everyone that has served on this board. Del Mar voters believed in our schools and approved bond MM with the understanding that Del Mar Heights School was a rebuild. According to dictionary.com, the definition of rebuild is to repair, especially to dismantle and reassemble with new parts. Please ask yourself if when Del Mar voters cast their ballot, they voted to build new buildings halfway across our field. We appreciate the recent January improvement, which now covers only half the field from 2/3 before. However, we still have 2/3 that we can improve upon. and go back to what voters believed in bond MM. This committee was heavily publicized as the oversight to ensure our dollars are spent on what was intended. Your job is to protect the taxpayer and ensure Del Mar voters are getting what they cast their ballot on. Del Mar voted to rebuild the school and improve our field. As the taxpayer casts their vote, improve the field does not mean spread buildings across half of it. Any voter reading improve the field expects that the district would improve things like gopher holes, divots, drainage, grass, irrigation systems. Buildings on the field do not improve our field. We appreciate the updates that you have made to eliminate we appreciate the updates that the district has made to eliminate some of the waste in the south end of the design. We are 1/3 of the way there. We ask that this committee find the rights within your power to protect what the taxpayers voted for. We ask that you not approve any expenses related to buildings or parking on the school field. No one is challenging the rebuild of the school, but no one cast their ballot to build buildings on the field. Thank you.
Thank you very much.
And can I enter this into the? Would anyone else like a copy?
Yeah, sure.
Okay, so we'll take the other public comment when that person arrives. Ms. Hawkins, could you let us know when that person gets here?
Yes, do you want me to fill out a slip or wait till she gets here?
Why don't you fill out a slip for her so we
Thank you
get
very
that
much.
next? Okay, while we're waiting on other public comments, we have the December 3rd, 2019 minutes provided. Is there any comments or a motion to approve? David, is that a motion?
I have a question.
Oh, okay.
Can you give some clarity under letter N, where I think it was you, Mr. Anslow, shared that the design issues are not part of the COC jurisdiction.
Let me try to clarify that to you.
I'm trying to get in my lane and I'm trying to stay there. That's what I'm trying to do.
As we discussed at the orientation meeting, what the principal function of the committee is to essentially provide that any expenditures that the school district makes on the listed projects, and again, I go back to the notebooks, which hopefully everybody has, and the school facilities project list. The committee does not get input on one design versus another design versus another design. That would be an advisory committee, which is not what this committee is. This committee's job is to essentially look at the expenditures and say, do those expenditures fit within the parameters of the school facility project list or not? If you feel that potentially they don't, you raise the question, we discuss it, we do a presentation if we need to. Is that helpful?
That we are in no way facilitating any input to the document, to the actual, the bond, or
Well, the facilities list, the school facilities project list, which is attached, it's in your, let me go back to the notebook, tab 8, attachment 1. That's cast in stone. The voter, that's already been written. The voters have already voted on that. That cannot be amended. Potentially, the school district board could choose to narrow it and say, we can go out here, but we're going to narrow it and not spend money out here. In all the years I've been doing this, I've never seen a school board do that. Because flexibility, you know what's going to come out in the next week, and you always want the flexibility. But the matters and facilities projects discussed within the school facilities project list constitute kind of the four corners of the area in which the district can spend the money. And the district can look anywhere within that school facilities project list and say, okay, it's over here, it's on page 2, it's on page 4, it's on page 6, because we didn't put every single description of every single item in every single school. There are wraparound provisions, which we talked about in the December meeting, which you see on page 1 and in the later pages.
Okay.
So again, we didn't try to list all of those because it would make the school facilities project list probably 50, 60 pages.
Okay.
Does that help?
It does.
Okay.
That's a lot.
I have a question. Sure. So when member of the public submits a comment to this meeting, I just see that in the minutes we say that a comment has been made, but we don't provide any details on what the comment was. Is that something that we should be doing, or?
It's up to the committee. Normally, what I've seen years I've been representing committees and public agencies, minutes do not end up being long transcripts with exactly what everyone said. They are summaries and principally to capture the actual actions. Who was at the meeting? What actions did they take? And they can summarize sometimes down to a single sentence the concept of other things submitted, including public comments. If the committee wants to say we'd like to have this statement spelled out more fully in the minutes, that's something you guys can express to staff. Remember, even though I'm your acting chairperson, cheerfully looking to give a job up, I'm not a member of the committee. The 7 of you are the committee. And as committee members, you get to make those decisions on how detailed and non-detailed the minutes are. Does that answer your question?
Yes, thank you. Sure.
Do we have any other questions on the December minutes?
I have a comment. The headers with the A, B, C, D, E, they're off, starting about 2/3 of the way down. Project progress update is I, J, K, there's an I that's wording, and so everything from then on is not according to the original agenda. It's off by one.
Okay, I didn't prepare the agenda, so I'll defer to staff members who might have done that.
Yes, I see what you're talking about.
Yeah, just because I was trying to correlate to my notes and they didn't correlate because they're off by one. And from after H.
Okay, so we
Can we
will.
approve them as updated with moving I to project?
Right, we can update them, we can update the editorial change to fix the references. Any other comments?
Thank you.
Yeah. Good catch.
Okay.
We need all of it.
With that change, is there a motion to approve?
I
I
move
think is that a question or a motion? Motion. Okay, I got a motion. Katie. And
Second.
Katie seconds, okay. Any other discussion? All
I
of
think we should discuss the issue about the public comment. Do we want to have a paragraph for that for each person?
I would like that.
I would like to just do a couple of sentences of summary so that when we are looking at these minutes in the future, we know what was talked about. Otherwise, we have to go back and look at something.
If I can paraphrase what I think I'm hearing is, once we've done voting on the December minutes, but the December minutes, essentially
yes.
will be the last ones, and then in future, there should be a more full discussion of public comments submitted. Would that be a fair capture?
A synopsis maybe by each person's name, public comment on agenda items,
Okay.
just a little synopsis of what they said.
Is that acceptable to the committee? Okay.
Certainly until we get past this part that we're dealing with right now.
There's no reason to think that's not fair. Yeah.
I think it'll sort itself out because if the issue sorts itself out and there are no other issues.
Right.
So I have a motion and a second on the December 3rd minutes. Any further discussion? All in favor say aye.
Aye.
Any opposed? Okay, I think that is okay. Is your person here yet? Okay. Why don't we go on with E, and now and staff has direction from the committee that whoever's doing the minutes, is that your job? Okay. Further expansion on public comments. Let's go to Mark, and item F, presentation of the bond analog.
Good evening, everyone. At the last meeting, we went over the expenditures through October 31st, and this time we're having the expenditures through December 31st. So just under a quarter, we're trying to get on that quarterly schedule, so that's why we ended it at the end of the year. The next one will be as of March 31st. So we were on a quarter system. On the second page, the first page is the title page, the second page, not much changes here. We just have the original budget, the actual expenditures to date, and then what the remaining balance is on the project. On the third page is where we see more changes, no more changes. The summary, we have the expenditures that we reviewed last time as of October 31st, which we were at about 379,000. We have the current expenditures, which is about 56,000. You can see the detail of those current expenditures right below this chart. So those two match up with the current expenditure detail. And then we have the total expenses of about 435,000, with the remaining balance of 1.9, almost $2 million on these open contracts.
Any questions for Mark on the?
This is for the Delmar Heights project first.
Is there anything you would like to say about the current expenditures?
So these are the same contracts that we had existing. So there weren't any added contracts so far, same type of work. So on the current expenditures, we submitted an application for the Department of Toxic Substance Control, about $1,500. Nova Services, they're doing our geotechnical services, which are like the boring, sampling of the soil, so just continuing with that work. PlaceWorks, they're environmental consultants, so continuing with the CEQA process with them. And then the Snipes, they're doing the surveying of the land.
Mark, can we get a handout to this for members of the public?
We're going to make some copies for members of the public. Anything else, Mark, on this? Did all the time on?
None on the Delmar Heights project.
Any other questions from the committee members?
I read in the paper that the architects are doing some additional work. Are we fine relative to our budgeted amounts of funds versus what the actual dollars will be if there's additional costs moving forward?
When we prepare the budget for our projects, we have a contingency for such issues so that we will maintain the budget that we have set in place. So yes, we would be using part of our contingency to cover some of the costs.
Where does that show up on here?
That would be under the,
Under the summary, the main summary page where it has the total project budget, and then at the bottom, we kind of lump the soft costs with the contingencies for now, but we're just 10 million.
Oh, I see.
So is there a detail of the additional soft costs and contingencies? Because that whole thing is not contingency, right?
Right, yeah. About 30% of the project is the soft costs. And then we have the contingencies.
So 30% of the 55 million?
Not the 42.
Oh, the 42.
Change to the construction. Okay.
Actually, it's less than.
Well, the architect fees, and that is part of the soft costs also. So,
I have a problem on that. So something is a soft cost and then you are complete, let's say a contingency, right? And you, let's say in this case, you need to use it. So do you then break it out or do you always kind of show up? I don't know.
so I think on the on the Pacific Islands Ranch project, we have an example of that. If we want to look at that one real quick, we can come back to Delmar Heights. But on the Pacific Islands Ranch one, we did have a change where we had to increase the cost for the surveying because we had to do an additional topography survey, so I added this column. So I added the column kind of right in the middle, right to the right of the original budget, where it shows the changes. And so we had that adjustment of 4,400 for that additional addendum there.
But has there been, like, with the Del Mar Heights project, have you looked into that contingency fee for the architecture, or is it
We
still
have not
part
at
of
this
that?
point, so when you look at needing to do, say, an addendum that would add some service, we haven't used it in the budget. So there are no costs associated at this point with any changes made.
Right,
It would
is it
show
not
up
like-
on a spreadsheet as any additional change costs because none of it incurred in it.
Right, so the board just approved an addendum at the January board meeting. So that'll probably be coming on the next expenditure report. For expenditure.
I still have a question about that additional soft cost and contingency line item. When we say 30%, that would be a much larger number that's showing up. I think it would be helpful for me to know at least a little bit more description of the additional soft costs versus the contingency, and maybe break out 2 line items and or more description. But 30% of even just the planning and construction fees would be more than the 10 million on the Del Mar Heights. So this would be helpful to know a little bit. I'm always
Okay.
uncomfortable with
Yeah.
contingencies that are so
On the
large.
next one, we'll break it down more. And I forgot to mention also that Michelle always brings copies of all the invoices, so if anybody wanted further detail, she has them with her.
Anything else to cover, Mark?
So just a little more on Pacific Highlands Ranch then, if we're okay with Del Mar Heights for now. So we had that addendum for the surveying. And then on the last page of the expenditure report, we have the same kind of changes with the revised budget expenditures as of our last report at the end of October 31st, and then what the current expenditures were. So for the current expenditures through December 31st, we spent about $154,000. And then similar types of work being done. So the geotechnical services, we have OBR as our architect fees, and then the environmental consultant and the surveying again.
Is that the page up on?
What is the land we purchased?
We're in the process, so the board at the, was it January 22nd board meeting approved to enter into a purchase agreement with
So it's happening, it's on, it's probably this quarter or next quarter.
Okay. It's on track, but there's a whole batch of variables that are involved in terms of things that have to be sorted through. So I wouldn't want to give you the impression that by the February meeting, it will be, that, the ownership change hands. But no one's dragging their feet, it's just there's a lot of complexity.
Right.
Our office is working.
Okay.
And the purchase price is firm at 10 million, or is there some chance that it's different than that?
I think we'll likely be a little bit larger. We finalized, there are still, as part of what Rob shared, that we're working with this firm on finalizing a couple of items related to mitigation unit that could reduce costs a little bit, but it will be, likely be more than $10 million and less than $1 million.
So that would just then come out of the contingency then, number?
Once we get the actual purchase and sale completed, a final dollar number will come back to the committee.
Can I ask, I'm sorry, but if we go, because your question about the additional soft costs, I'm just now processing this. If you look at the Pacific Highlands Ranch project budget, what is happening is, any time where it says the 4,000, and so all of the soft soft costs or contingencies will show up in one of those object codes. Is that right? There's not like a separate line item for soft cost. It's going to show up as one of the costs that are associated with one of those object codes that you have. Is that right? Because like,
I don't think so.
well, except if you look at, that's where it says the surveying costs. See how the surveying costs had 4,000?
That's because we didn't have enough original budget, so they took it out of the contingency and put it up into the one.
Right, but I'm
Just
wondering,
wondering with the code, if she could look down the line item.
see, if you look at the 4,400, it's the same thing as the additional soft costs and contingencies.
We have a budget, I believe, for the contingency and all that budget is existing.
But are you, so you're
I'm
saying, I
it's
want to know,
not- I don't believe that it's detailed in all these GL accounts here, the object codes, I think, correct me if I'm wrong, but there are other codes that are not being listed that are additional soft costs, and another one that's for contingency, so that's why I said I'd like to see a little bit more detail, so that we would understand what it is and how much contingency is there.
So,
Is that not correct?
just to be clear,
yeah,
so the budget, as we look at Pacific Highlands Ranch, is 68.4 million.
yeah,
Of that is nearly 11 million of soft cost and contingency.
right.
So we have an estimate of what, let's say, furniture and equipment, technology, and other expenditures are going to be. But until we actually enter into a contract or actually know what that actual cost is, we will not reflect it in the budget. But as the project moves on and we have a more definitive cost effect, you will see that soft cost line of 10.9 million reducing and those numbers moving up once we get those actual numbers. So our budget currently is 68.4 million for Pacific Highlands Ranch. It will stay within there, and those soft costs will move up the line to the others once we actually know. Because at this point, let's say we don't know what furniture and equipment is going to actually cost on the project, but we know that we have something set aside for it. So we'll be coming to you with a more definitive budget as we move forward.
Yeah, so
Is that
that's,
okay?
so yeah, so that basically is like you already kind of knew you were going to have this set of money that you were going to need. You don't know exactly where it's going, but you figured out you need about $11 million for it. And so there isn't like, in that $11 million, there's a furniture budget, or is there? I think that's
There's
my
clear
question.
estimates, and so I think that's
There are
where
estimates.
you have a general, a fairly standard practice in school construction to think that you'll need about 30% for soft costs. So you typically budget 30 to 35% for soft costs, and that will include all the things that Kathy mentioned, as well as the fees for the Department of State Architect and all of these other pieces that do not associate with the general construction costs. So all of the associated fees that go in that Kathy spoke to.
Okay, so basically within that 11 million, essentially for all of those object codes though, you could basically, under additional soft costs and contingencies, you could have an entire new set of site planning, construction related costs. That's my,
Well, I think, thank you for explaining it. I think really what they're saying is, what I would like to know is what the contingency number is of the 10,987,000 as the contingency, and then what potentially makes up those additional soft costs, because I was not clear that it was going to be furniture and equipment technology office. You know, like, I don't know where in here, or if there is another line item that it would eventually pop up. So that would be helpful, but it was clear, they clarified that they will take it out of this $10 million lump sum and put it in the appropriate line
so that's great.
items
So when they actually-
except for contingency, right?
Right.
That's the only one that doesn't have a separate line item. So that was very clarifying to me too, because I
So we'll
wasn't
add more
sure.
detail.
Yeah, I can see that, yeah, okay.
Mark, anything else to cover?
Unless there's other questions.
Is there any other questions on either the Heights or Pacific Islands Ranch? The budget that you have in front of you. Hearing none, I think we had another member of the public who wanted to speak.
You ready for me?
Sure. Well, we've reached a breaking point between items, so it's probably the best time.
Okay. Where would you like this?
Right here in the corner of the table, so you can see everybody.
Good evening, my name is Rosanna Alvarado Martin. I'm a parent, a neighbor at the school. Thank you for allowing me to speak tonight. I had challenges with work and childcare, so that's why I apologize. I first wanted to thank the Citizens Oversight Committee for taking on this enormous task. I so appreciate the fact that you're here and that you're doing this. And just as I came in, I heard someone bring up the soft costs and contingencies, and that's something that I looked at all weekend and pondered because I thought the numbers were really huge. I was a little surprised that the Heights number was less than Pacific Highlands Ranch because the complexity of a rebuild situation versus new construction. There's probably more unknowns at Delmar Heights than there are at Pacific Highlands Ranch. So that surprised me a little bit. But I was also very pleased to hear that someone was asking for more details because I'm curious if what's in that contingency is the profit for the construction company. Is that the supervision? Does that cover their overhead? I mean, what else is in there? It's like, what I saw, I think it was a little over 18%, almost 19%. That is the soft costs and contingencies. It's just a really big number. And I've been asking the district some detailed questions about other budget items, and I'm not getting any answers. So I was concerned. I have to tell you that I was also concerned to learn that the district joined a lobbyist group, a large lobbyist group, and the fact that a number of the companies that we're working with on these projects are part of this lobbyist group concerns me. And so I brought with me a document from the lobbyist group's website. And I don't think I have enough copies for everyone. I think there's 9 copies. And I apologize, when we get to the end, my color is running out on my But these are all large donors to bonds. Because that's what this lobbyist group does, is they write school bonds. And then they have big conferences. And all the construction companies and the architectural firms, they all show up and they sell, what they do. It's a pretty big money machine. And it makes me sad that this is what's behind Measure and And so, prior to coming to you, I went to the district, I asked questions about it, no one responded to me. So,
Ms. Martin, we've had you 3 minutes to ask you to sum up.
yes. So, thank you so much for being the Independent Oversight Committee. And I asked a few months ago for email addresses so that the citizens could reach out to you without having to go through the district. And
We can discuss that under separate agenda.
awesome. Thank you. Thank you.
Thank you, Commissioner. Okay, let's go to item G, Chris, measure and update.
Tonight's, we have my handouts for everybody.
Does everybody have this
Oh,
handout?
there's one more still on the,
Anybody remember the public? Would like a copy?
Oh, I have that. Thank you.
so tonight we will go over 3 main topics. we'll go to Pacific Highlands Ranch School number 9, our Delmar Heights School rebuild, and then a couple of upcoming projects that we anticipate coming very soon in the plan. Pacific Highlands Ranch School number 9, our design symposium process has been completed. We continue to accept community input. We were able to complete the CEQA process between the last time that we met and now. As was just mentioned, we are entering the escrow process, and there's a purchase agreement that has been agreed to. So that is a very exciting step that moves us towards being able to purchase the land and then build the school. And we still anticipate the design, development, and construction documents to be completed in the fall. Construction will start in the winter and go through the spring of 2022. That again provides us the time to be able to bring people in, have some staff and parents in the community and help to start a school, which we haven't done in years. So we'll be able to have the school ready well in advance of starting school in August of 2022. We also shared with the board just this last board meeting that there have been some new renderings and further progress in the central cafeteria. And so I share a few of those renderings here, and that continues to move forward as well. And it is a reason why, while there is one less general classroom at this school site, we do see a slightly larger budget for this school site as well. So we continue to maintain, as Mark just showed, a construction budget of $45 million, property budget of approximately $10 million. So that will increase above $10 million, but stay within what we anticipate in the contingency question. And then the overall project budget of being the construction costs to 30% for soft costs in the property at $68 million. For the Delmar Heights School rebuild, we completed the design symposium process, so we continue to have community input and continue to make updates and adjustments to the plan. We anticipate releasing documents for CEQA, providing them for public review in February, March, and getting to the board of trustees. After providing that public review, being able to take in that public review and then bring it to the board of trustees in March, April. That would still allow us to do construction documents through the spring and be able to start construction in summer of 2020 and have school start in August of 2021.
So I remember for Pacific Highlands Ranch area, when you folks designed the school, there's many community sessions, meetings, and people have to go and comment as part of the design. So do we don't have those sessions with Delmar Heights, or why there are so many people? I don't understand.
Fantastic segue. So the community design process that we went through with Delmar Heights, we had 5 community meetings in the spring of 2019, and we followed up with 2 in the fall of 2019. Similarly, it was open to all public to attend, and went through a similar process with local community input and district input based on our facilities master plan and our bond, and then moving through goals, facts, needs, and really started with no design, moved into priorities that shape the design. The priorities that came out from facilities master plan.
Just to be clear, the community design process that was on, that was just for Delmar?
This is purely the Delmar Heights. This is a segue. This is the Delmar Heights process.
And Chris, is there ongoing community input now?
We continue to receive community input. We've received it through emails and board meetings. People have reached out and shared ideas and plans, and we continue to reach out and share updates through that. So we are posting, we have conversations and phone calls and a number of different means by which we cover. This was the formal process that we went through, and then we've tweaked, and I will I'll show you in a moment. There's been further updates to the site plan that was mentioned a little bit earlier.
Is that why CEQA is not done for Delmar Heights? We know that it is done for the Delmar East.
That's part of it. As we've had updates, there's been a need to make some adjustments in the assessment by our consultants, and We also, it's a different process with the two. The Pacific Highlands Ranch project was under a master environmental impact report for the party that led to just an addendum for the Pacific Highlands Ranch, and there will be, we're still in the process of reviewing with our consultant on what is the appropriate documents to release. So we should have that fairly soon, and we'll be able to share that with the public.
Comment?
Yes, there will be a public comment period. It'll be shared, it'll be noticed. We will be reaching out in a number of ways to make sure that there is an opportunity for the public to provide input. And I will update before I post this that it's clear, because I started with Delmar High School rebuild on this slide, and the rest are Delmar High School rebuild, but I will update so that it's clear that when I post this, it's Delmar High School and Pacific Highlands Ranch, so each slide is clear to which projects, so there isn't any confusion. And then there were a couple of points of the design priorities that came up from the site. On the site at Delmar Heights were reducing vehicle congestion, improving pedestrian safety, maximizing on-site vehicle queuing, maximizing parking, maintaining the neighborhood views, and emergency vehicle access. There were also some building priorities that came out through this process around campus interconnection, flexibility and adaptability, indoor-outdoor, collaboration and transparency, natural light, fresh air, access to views, flexible technology, and centrally located multi-use space. And then we've had priorities related to fields and repairing or upgrading play structures and fields for improved student safety. From our bond measure, we'll be repairing and upgrading the field surface, doing grading to improve that surface. There will be ADA accessible path to provide improved access for students and visitors with disabilities. We know that the sprinkler system currently, there are ended up being breakages, and then that leads to depressions in there, and then there's some issues with that sprinkler system being upgraded. And then the play structures, the ground material that we were putting in will be accessible, safer, and more appropriate. So that, it came up at the last meeting, some questions about the process, so we thought it was appropriate to share with the committee a little bit more about that. We still, as Mark has shared the numbers, but we still see a construction budget of $42 million. And then the project budget, which is the construction plus the soft costs of approximately $55 million. And more approximations as opposed to Mark's exact numbers on his sheet. This rendering is the most current rendering? This is the most current site plan that was shared with the board on January 22nd. There have been some adjustments made. It still fits the district's vision in focusing on, from early on, some of the visuals that our architects put together and working with community and staff, looked at the idea of having our classrooms, common learning areas, and outdoor learning. And so this update changes the layout a little bit in that it's grades 1 through 3 together and 4 through 6. Previously it was 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6, so there's an adjustment there, but maintains the indoor-outdoor and the ability to go from classroom, collaborative learning indoors, and then learning specific spaces for outdoor learning so that our students are not just inside the classrooms throughout the day. Square footage is actually very close to the same of the buildings, but there were a couple of opportunities that were taken. The architects took, you may notice that the drop-off zone is a little bit to the north of where it was, which makes it a little more centrally located. Would be better for the flow of the school. And we kept the vision for the campus, and we were able to keep those classroom, indoor learning, and outdoor learning. But we removed the separation between the 5-6 classrooms and the 3-4 classrooms, which allowed to make some adjustments in. So there weren't changes to classroom size. There was no change to the focus on the indoor and outdoor. It was more of how can we make some adjustments to bring pieces in. And if you look at the last iteration of the plan, there was a little bit more space to the east side next to the drop-off pickups. There were a few of those pieces that helped to make adjustments the architects were able to make to maintain the district vision and maintain the instructional vision while making some adjustments that actually align sort of a primary and upper, which is a much more common layout that we have in our schools, and then put those groups together.
Earlier in the meeting, you mentioned that there was, the board approved a change or additional expenses. Can you just tell us a little bit more about that? I had to miss that.
So we've had an addendum related to some fire sprinkler work for safety. And we've had an addendum related to the portables, including portables that will need to be put onto Dollar Hills and Ocean Air to facilitate the building of the project.
So, but they were not related to the rebuild itself or the design part of it?
They both will impact the project, one with the portables, because you need to go through DSA, Department of State Architects, to get those portables on the campus. And then for the fire sprinkler, there was a need for some further support from them, and then needing some support from the consultants that is specializing to allow for that to be created correctly. It wasn't something that was needed in the contract, so we wanted to ensure that we had that and that was done exactly as it should be. So then upcoming projects, two upcoming projects that we shared that we are working on the next steps towards design are some field upgrades. Delmar Hills Academy and Torrey Hills both have fields that are in great need of upgrade and repair. And Delmar Hills Academy will have a number of students from Delmar Heights for a year. And Torrey Hills School, we will also be making some improvements across the field, and there will be some improvements to the backstop and the baseball area of that school. So we are working towards the planning. In an ideal world, we're able to do at least one of those over the summer of 2020. But with the timeline, we potentially look at summer of 2021. So we'll be able to update better on where we're at with the budget and the architect selected and who we're going to have to work on that. Most likely 2020.
So there is no total budget yet for just this portion of it? It will just be carved out of the total measuring unit that was allocated?
So it was already budgeted in measuring. So there was money in measuring, and we budgeted in that these fields would need to be replaced. So it will be taken from measuring, and it won't be taken from those two projects.
This will be like the part of the next tranche, or will be already drawn the money?
That's where, well, there's actually two ways. We are working on the final piece, because there's also a non-measure and funding source that could potentially be used for Torrey Hills. So I'm sharing with you that these are upcoming, and I'll have more detail for you the next week.
Chris, can you just expand a little bit? It looks on the Delmar Heights school rebuild, the rendering, that there are two baseball diamonds on there. Is that, is Delmar, I know this has been a source of issue. Is Delmar Heights, will they keep their baseball diamonds, and there will be a new one at Torrey Hills, or what's?
These would be at a slightly smaller size to what they currently have. These would be serviceable for the younger levels of the wood, and so it would be something that we could, you could use at that level, but it won't be the same as it currently is.
And this will all be grass, right, as opposed to?
That's correct. So it'd be more like the field you would see at Ashley Falls, for example. We still run practices, and we still have some of the kids that will play there. Any other questions?
Any other questions? Okay, let's move to item H, which was brought up by members of the public, and that is that we have the website for the Citizen Oversight Committee, and your names are all there. But one of the questions that varies from committee to committee, and usually by committee member to committee member, is what contact information you wish to provide through the website or otherwise available to the public. Usually it would be on the website. Some people are very comfortable in having their personal phone numbers and email contacts on the website. Some community members, in my experience, are not comfortable with that. So this is really a matter of, I think, individual choice. The committee can't dictate to an individual committee member, you will have this on, and you will not, have a choice to say no. So
that the easiest way to create a district email address. You can access it from our start page and just log into the web. If the committee would like that, we can create those. It's a fairly easy setup, and we have a help guide for you, and then you just be logging into an online web portal for our Outlook. We could post those then to the website and use those DMUSD.org emails, and we can see
So that it's centralized here, right? And we could probably get a feed down to our phone so that we wouldn't, can we do it that way? Or do we have to log on?
You could set it up so we'll get your phone.
Perfect. That way,
And you could also-
it's going to be better if it's all in one place.
It's really going to be up to the committee members what you choose to do. If you choose to use your own email address on the website, you can. You can use the district provided email. You can put your phone number. You can put all of those. You can put none of those. If you prefer to have, the public interface through written communication, i.e. hard copy, to the district and say, that's how I want to get my communication, that's up to individual members of the committee. So, ask you to work with Chris on a direct basis in terms of what you as individual members would like. I will share a story with you that we did have a client many years ago who had a controversial project. They had all provided their email addresses, and the next committee meeting, they came in and every single one of them said, I want my email address on this, because they had just been bombarded on the topic, even though it wasn't in their jurisdiction. They just got, literally, they were getting 10 to 20 to 30 emails a day, every day on their email account, saying, do this, don't do this, do this, don't do this, and it just overwhelmed them. I think using a district email address is a way to kind of manage that information flow. That way that if an email is there for you, it's specific to your role on the committee and not part of your personal email communications. So again, if you'd all interface with Chris and let him know what it is you'd like to do, if you'd like to have the district set up and your district email for you and how you work it through the phone, the magic that makes that happen, David, I prefer to get
So the address would be something like ira@DMUSD.
Yeah, so it'd probably be typically its first initial last name unless we have some sort of a naming convention issue with somebody else in the district. Mine's c.delahante@DMUSD.org, so we create those. We've actually created them, assuming that you may want to go this route. If you don't, we can delete it, which is fine too. And so if you would like to go this route, I can share with each of you individuals, give you the contact information, your DMUSD email address, a help guide to set it up, and the link to go and log into the web. And then if you had any issues, myself and my staff can support you in getting it set up. So it would be very easy for us to do that for you. And then if that's a route, then I can easily put those as the email addresses and link them to the website for each of you as well.
The goal here is to make it so that members of the public can contact you in some fashion, whatever you're comfortable with, without essentially getting burdensome or without violating your privacy. That's different for every single person. Some people are very jealous of their privacy. Some people say, no, I want it to come to my personal email. That's the only way I check. Again, it's up to each of the individual committee members. You let Chris know what you want to do. Questions?
No, I think it's really about the question about the phone, because what I would want to have is people sending a bunch of stuff that usually don't really take the time to, look at it, like, just the whole purpose of this is to have a vehicle for people to actually provide input, but, so if we can figure out how to set it up on our phones, then then you can sort of, it automatically updates, and you know if there's a message for you or not. That seems like the easiest solution to me. So
And there may be
I go
different
for
ways
that.
to configure that. So again, I defer to Chris.
I don't know if we have any helps in that. We can look and see something that's going to be pretty straightforward and similar to what you do with your Gmail or
Yeah, at least on an iPhone, when you set up an account, there's an option for an Outlook or an Exchange, and that's how you can add a new account.
Exactly.
This should just get done.
Right, exactly.
Which is fine.
There are also some of us who are far more tech savvy than
Let's
the
centralize
rest
it
of
here.
us. So it's really up to you as to which way you want to set up the lines of communication.
Can I ask, I think I'm hearing some interest in the DMUSD.
Yes.
And I will share that information with each of you. If you have anything that If you have questions about it, you just say, I prefer another email address. You can certainly just respond and say, you know what, I prefer to use this email address, and I can use that to set up, or if you, so I've said, if you have a different way you want to communicate, and I'm happy to help you with however we can set that up so that
We let district staff know what you want to do, and that's what will go up on the website. Okay, item I. Let me first say that if you would like me to continue to sit here and be your acting chairperson, I can do. If one of you wants to seize the reins, I'm open to people wanting to step forward. Any discussion on this? Ira?
I still think you're doing a great job.
it's a warm hug every time I see you.
I'm not seeing, I'm getting the feeling like Wally or the robot step back and I'm left out.
Let's break ground and see how the Heights turns out, and then we'll have a serious conversation after that.
Okay. So for the moment, I'm going to remain your acting chair.
You are doing a great job.
Thank you. But we will keep it as a standing agenda item, so if one of you decides that, you know, people are of Lucian, you can come and get me. Item J, how far out would people like to look at meetings? Do you just want to set the next one, or do you want to set multiples reaching out into 2020? What would you like to do? Just, okay, I heard, what should I say, just the next one?
I prefer just to set the next one.
Okay, so one at you prefer at the moment to just do it one at a time? Okay. I'll look at the staff. Do we want to reach out about 2 months, which would put us to early April? At that point in time, we'd probably be in the CEQA process for Del Mar Heights. Does that work for the committee?
We have spring break, April 6th through the 10th.
You might want to do it after, maybe do it after then? Or would you prefer to do it before? Probably after? Okay, so what was that, the Marcos?
April 10th is the last day of spring break.
Okay, so if we look at the week of the 13th of April.
Can we go past tax time? Past the 15th.
So if we look into the week of the 19th of April, I'm going to look at Holly and Kathy because we'd like to have the two ladies here.
16th is going to be tax day, so.
Well, this will be after that, but let's do the 19th later.
The 20th?
20th. So Friday.
Monday, 20th.
Yeah,
Monday, April 20th.
Okay, would that, at 5:30, would that work for everybody? Okay, so we'll set our next meeting with concurrence of the committee for April 20th, 5:30 here. At some point in time, the committee may want to, probably once either demolition begins or maybe construction, which one will probably get going first? The Heights or the new
Right now,
school?
our time of the Heights being one that starts this summer, so this summer will be good.
Okay, so maybe, again, if the committee would like to, we may be able to have a meeting over at the Del Mar Heights School and go through the final plan and be able to see the buildings as they are maybe demolished or maybe the start of construction, subject to safety, of course. By that time, if it's summertime, we'll have daylight to work with at a 5:30 meeting. So you get a chance to actually see what is there on the ground. Is that something the committee would be interested in? Okay, so probably not the April meeting, maybe June or in the fall of 2020. We'll ask them to come back to the committee and say, hey, would you like to have a meeting at the Heights? And then another thing, once we get going on the new school, maybe once we get foundations poured or get enough something we're working on, we can have a meeting. I don't know, probably want to have some, maybe in the trade, in the construction trade or something like that. Have a meeting up there so you can actually see the site, the new school laying out. Once they've started to pour foundations, you start to get an idea of how it will actually look and work. When you're looking at just bare dirt, it's hard to conceive of these things. But once we get maybe the foundations poured or start getting sticks in the air, so you can start to see the layout of the buildings, that might be helpful for the committee. So maybe Michelle can just remind us of that as we move to the 2020 meetings. Okay. Item K, duration of Citizens Oversight Committee meetings. So far tonight we're at 1 hour. Is there anybody who has any thoughts about maximum lengths of meetings or minimum lengths of meetings?
With the childcare issue.
Childcare
Talk about
issues,
this.
Okay. Is that a would like to keep the meeting?
I would like to keep the meetings, we have a hard stop at 7.
Okay, so an hour and a half.
But sometimes less is more.
Yeah. You don't get to fill the space, yeah.
Except when you're being paid by the owner.
I think as we get into the the bond payment log, as construction costs start to gear up, I'm looking 6-8 months down the road. I think you'll find that the logs Mark presented will get a lot more detailed, there'll be a lot more pages, so there'll be more to go through. So just be aware of that. We will recognize the committee's desire for a hard stop at an hour and a half, but I think as long as we move through the agenda items and, everybody gets the chance to maybe review stuff in advance, I think we can live with that.
One question is do we have a quorum issue, or do we have if people have to leave, sometimes that, yeah.
Let me cover that. There's really 2 guidance points for quorums on the committee. Remember, if you step back to the organizational meeting, we talked about, the committee can conduct business in what's called a Brown Act setting. Normal process under state law is that a majority of the members of the legislative body, which would be 4 of the 7, as soon as you get 4 of the 7, you have a meeting for purposes of law. And you can conduct business as soon as you have a quorum. So as long as we can get 4 people in a room, we're good to go. If a member needs to leave, you get a text that says, oh my God, Johnny's been hit by a car, I need to go. Get up and go, okay? Essentially what we just show is that member leaves the meeting at that point in time. But as long as we have a quorum, as long as we have 4 people in the room, we can still conduct business. And that person hopefully can be brought back up to speed with, the staff at a later point in time. That, again, if there's something that prevents a person from being here, and you're not going to be able to be here, let the district staff know so we don't sit around waiting for that person to show up. Does that answer the question?
Yeah, yes, I was just thinking if our goal is to basically have a hard stop at 7, but that would be the goal.
The goal
But
is-
I'm assuming that everybody's going to have a childcare issue, so if some of us had to leave at that
If
point,
somebody-
we couldn't.
If a member has to leave, I will ask, as long as I'm sitting in the seat,
Yeah.
I will ask the committee, do you want to keep going or do you want to stop it, push it off to another meeting. The other thing we can do is, let's assume we get bogged down in discussions on the payment law, just for example, and that takes us an hour and 15 minutes while we wrestle with that question, leaving us 15 minutes to cover the rest. You can also adjourn this meeting to what's called a special meeting, or an adjourned meeting of the committee, a week downrange, and cover the remainder of the items. That's not, that still involves herding the cats into a single room. It's not the preferential item. The way we'd like to do it is to get all of the pending business done within the hour and a half window. And as long as I'm sitting in this seat, I will make every effort to get that done. Sooner or later, you guys are going to film that. So we have a goal. What we will reflect is a goal of a hard stop at 7, recognizing that if we need to go past 7, it'll be up to the committee members whether they want to close it out as 1 or 2 people leave, as long as we have a quorum. Once we drop below 4 people in the room, the meeting's going to adjourn, and you can't do anything else. Any questions on that?
Or I think it's more about we need to be aware of how long it will take. So if we're saying next meeting end at 7, I anticipate it at 7. If we say it's going to take longer, let's end it at 8, I'm hoping to be 8, but it's not, it's about have that expectation so we don't run over time.
I think staff understands what the goal of the committee will be. And in setting up the agendas, because I work a little bit with staff to get that done, we're not trying to overload the agendas so that we're here for a long, long period of time. But we have in mind the goal of being reasonably efficient with everybody's time.
What I meant was just like every meeting, I would need to avoid the representative to plan ahead so that, we have a patient. It's not like we won't be available, it's that we won't be able to plan things ahead. Yeah.
I think staff has heard what you had to say. Any other questions? Okay. That's K. Any, L, any comments from any of the committee members on any issues, questions, Ira? You had your hand up first. He beat you somehow.
I'm sorry. I just want to say,
We gotta get you the Jeopardy button.
but I think the staff can see that judging from some of the comments, I'm sure, we are all getting input from the community about Del Mar Heights. And I just want to make sure that you know that, and I know the school board is getting input and they've made certain decisions, and I just think it's important for you to continue to receive that input. And as far as I can tell you, yeah, it's a lot of meetings early on, I attended some of the meetings, and I've been very pleased at the way you feel flexible and you change things. I just think it's important to keep that up.
Already done?
I am done.
Okay, I have a couple of things I wanted to know. First one, like the job of the committee is to stay in the four corners, as you say, of what was presented to the voters. So in the case where, and today, for example, members of public brought this up, but in future, if this question comes up, like was some project part of the four corners, like if there was a sentence in the measure and then whether a specific project meets those, the intent of what was said in the measure document, how do we resolve?
I think that maybe what we can have, at least for the moment for Del Mar Heights, since it does seem to be, the topic that the community has in mind, is that maybe what we do, I'm kind of looking at Michelle and Chris here, is have a discussion item about Del Mar Heights and expenditure of funds on Del Mar Heights, so we can talk about that specific issue. That's the kind of thing where we could go through the language as we did at the last meeting and say, okay, we see this, this, and this, and then it's up to the committee to say, are we satisfied with that or not? If the committee's not satisfied that the expenditure is within the boundaries, then what the committee can do is say, we're going to pen a letter from the committee to the school board with this question. School board, please answer us. That's really your job, because your direct line, the arrow that goes up, goes to the school board. They're the people who appoint you. So you can raise that question to the school board can look to staff and consultants and say, yes, no, hopefully the answer is yes, and respond back to the committee of, we think it is because, and then it's up to the committee to decide, are we happy with that answer, or do we want something more? That answer your question?
Yeah, how do we begin that process?
Well, what we would do is we would have, I'd suggest we have the discussion specifically of Del Mar Heights expenditures on the next agenda.
Can we do it before March? Because there's a time issue.
If the committee wants to hold a special meeting between now and March.
Yes. Well,
What's the issue?
it's the expenditures of Del Mar, or Del Mar Heights, and whether or not they're appropriate in relation to the intent of the bond.
Well, again, there's the intent of the bond and what people are interpreting as the intent of the bond, and then there's the actual language. I'm going to give you an example. Let's go back to item 8 in your notebooks and attachment 1, which is the description of the school facilities project list. And I'm doing this, I would probably say the same thing if we held a special meeting. It's up to the committee. If you want to hold a special meeting between now
But I
and...
know, that's the thing, is that, but we're the citizens committee, for the benefit of the citizens. We're the citizens acting for the benefit of the citizens. And if this is our lane, or if this is our role, then we have an obligation, I suspect.
again, it is the job of the committee to look at, is an expenditure or intended expenditure outside the four corners of the school facilities project list. The school facilities project list, again, tab 8, attachment 1, pages 1 through 8. This is what the school district can spend Measure MM bond dollars on. Now understand, as soon as you get outside of Measure MM, general fund monies, or state bond monies, or other sources of money, such as CFD monies, this committee doesn't have jurisdiction.
Correct.
Okay,
So
I
in
just want
other
to be clear
words,
about
even
that.
if we decided that you couldn't use MM money for a certain expenditure item, that doesn't mean that Delmar School District could not also then decide to use another pocket of, set of funds.
That's exactly
To do
right.
the exact thing.
Yes, I'm not saying one
Yeah,
is
right.
happening, I just want to be clear about what the jurisdiction of the committee is.
Which is that was my question, is what's our role? If the citizens need us, and we have a role that we can do to help them, even just to get clear, to help with resolution, so that it doesn't turn into this festering thing later, do we have responsibility to them?
Again,
And can we help?
if the committee wants to hold a special meeting to specifically discuss particular expenditures in terms of Measure MM money on Delmar Heights, you could call us, we can do that at the, for the April 20th meeting, or if you feel it's needed to do it earlier than that, we can set another meeting.
Go ahead.
Well, my only 2 cents, I have read the bond. I'm satisfied with myself about this, but if we want to do a meeting like this, we should do it in like the next week, like not like.
Right. You can't wait, because we have a time issue. And that's the other question is that when's the stop date? Do we have to start building Delmar Heights? We have to start building that to get it done on time. So we want to get this.
What's the cutoff in order to get, as I understand, the August 2021 ready to open date, what's our have to start construction date?
We would have to start the demo this summer.
Okay, well, summer's 3 months long. August, what, May, you talking about?
We're talking about June, July.
Okay.
It's a pretty soon, but.
Plus, they would have to design it, the architects would have to design it prior, right?
Right, which was the question we asked earlier about the cost for architecture and whether or not there was enough margin in there in the event that.
Well, let me clarify that.
Yeah.
The budget, how much money to expend on an individual project is not within the purview of the committee. How much, if the school district says to design the school, and I'm going to pull numbers out of the air. If the school district says it takes $5 million to design versus $10 million to design, that is not how much is spent on something, unless it's being spent outside of the boundaries of Measure MM, is not for this committee to decide, unless you decide, gee, building gold faucets as part of this is a little over the top.
Right.
Okay? The school district board makes the decision of, this is how much money we're going to allocate for this design versus this design. So I hope that's helpful, if that's causing you concern.
I mean, it seems to me nobody is making the argument that there was no money allocated for redoing the fields. That nobody's making that argument. What the argument is that some people don't like the way the field is being reduced in size or being reallocated or whatever. I don't know all the details. But nobody's saying that. So I just don't think that that's a role for us. I think that's a school board and administration policy, and not a question for us.
Again, the amount of allocated funds is generally not within the purview of this committee. You have the ability to look at that and say, hey, I see this much money being spent on that. Tell me what that money was expended for. And if that expenditure is outside the boundaries of the four corners, then the committee has the ability to stick its hand out. But if it's a question of, gee, what's the appropriate amount to expend on this? In other words, is the design cost $5 million versus $5.5 million? That's the contract, that's the bid.
That's not our jurisdiction.
The amount of the bid is the jurisdiction of the school district board. as long as that process, in other words, the money is being expended on items within the four corners.
Okay. Okay.
So I'll go back to the committee again. Is there a desire to have another meeting before April 20th to review the Delmar Heights expenditures in terms of whether or not they are in the four corners of the school facilities project list?
Not for me.
Okay. I'm not seeing hands going up.
Sorry.
No, that's okay.
No, this is it. Let's go to
Yeah, I don't think we need to have it, but it maybe, I just wanted some, clarification on just, the process, which is why I asked the question.
No, that's good. The meetings are so people can ask questions. I'm trying to respond to these as, as the bond counsel who drafted most of these documents, I actually wrote them. There was a lot of input on the school facilities project list from staff, because it was principally generated by staff. I don't know very much about the individual schools in terms of what nuts and bolts to put in each school, so the staff generated this. But in terms of what the voters authorized and what this committee's principal mission is to look at the school facilities project list and say, okay, and I'm going to draw an example here. If we talk about, and I'm not going to talk about Delmar Heights, I'll talk about, at Delmar Hills Academy, Chris comes and says, okay, we're going to put in new driveways. I'm just pulling this out of here, at Delmar Hills Academy. Is that covered in the four corners? Do you see language that either says driveway or parking or access or roadways? Something that gets you to being able to spend, measure, and spend dollars on that. And we can have that discussion. If you want to have it set up for April 20th, we're happy to do that.
So, Rob, one of the concerns that I've heard from some of the citizens, the Delmar Heights people, is that they're concerned that, one of the things in here says like repair or upgrade the play structures or the fields, and that buildings are being built on what has been the field, and that is not technically improvement of the field to put a building on the field.
Again,
So that's what I'm wondering, like, is that really?
That's a semantic argument.
Right.
If you wanted to go through the individual words and say, okay, we've heard this, what about this, what about
Yeah,
that?
yeah.
That's a longer discussion, and in the 10 minutes we have till our goal of heart stop, I don't think, I could probably cover that together with Chris, okay? But that's not something we've targeted for on the agenda, so we have a Brown Act issue.
Right.
We also have, our hour and a half hard stop. That's why, based on what David was saying, is do you want to have a specific meeting to just cover that before April 20th? Or do you want to have it as an agenda item for discussion on April 20th? And that's up to the committee members.
Can I ask a question of the committee members? How many of you believe that, have looked at and read the bond language and believe that it would be improper use? Improper use of funds. Do you have any, do you have a sense of like, if that you think that it is worthy of a separate conversation?
That's a good question, because if somebody believes it, then I think that's a good argument.
Wait, if someone believes that this is right, because I think if you've read the Delmar Times, if you've participated in the Delmar School Board meetings, if you believe that there is potentially an issue, then we should absolutely have that meeting, and we should have it immediately. If you are not inclined to believe that this is outside, that the current plan is outside of the scope of what the bond is, then it is not clear to me that we actually need to discuss it, because we would be advocating for positions that we don't hold.
And understand, it is, what we would present would be the district's standpoint and position to the committee.
Right. But I think what I'm hearing from you all is that the district has presented a particular viewpoint. We have received public comment countering that viewpoint, which is, and are bringing it up. But my question is, for all of you individually, is whether you which version of the interpretation of the bond are you currently standing on? I had made it clear in public comment at the last board meeting, and I stood up for the board meeting, and, you know, I am in support of this project and do not believe that it violates the bond. But I could be mistaken, I could have a different view than other people, so it's just a question of, for all of you.
Well, on page 1-3, under tab 8, under Delmar Heights School, we did highlight last time. It says repair or upgrade play structures / fields for improved student safety. So.
Now, I will point out one other thing. Remember that when you look at the bond measure, you look at the entirety of the bond measure, and I'm going to give you an example. If you were to look at Delmar Heights Academy, I'm deliberately not talking about the Heights, you don't see anything in there about design. What we did is we moved on those things that are applicable to all of the projects. If you go to page 1.6 and 1.7, you'll find more of the what I call the wraparound language that are applicable to all of the projects. So what I'm suggesting to the committee members is that you may want to look past individual bullets and look at the totality of the school facilities project list.
So for example, where it said on page 1.6, where it says necessary site preparation / restoration in connection with renovation or remodeling, including egress, removing, replacing, or installing, all of that, installing irrigation, utility lines, trees and landscaping, relocating fire access roads, and acquiring any necessary easements, licenses, or rights of property, one might say that
Yeah, that's part of the
particular
wraparound.
provision
Yeah.
is the thing that authorizes
The project, yeah, that's exactly right. The project list is a whole. So the fact that you may not find, what I was trying to point out is, for the Delmar Hills Academy, you wouldn't find the design costs there, you'd find it elsewhere in the project. But I think we're starting to get a little far down the rabbit hole in this particular discussion. I think I need to kind of bring us back to the question of whether or not the committee wants to have a specific targeted meeting on this before April 20th. That's one option. Next option is, do you want to discuss it on April 20th at our next meeting? Third option is, we don't want to discuss it at all. I think the third option of we don't want to discuss it at all seems to be kind of off the table. So the question really, I think, boils down to, if I'm interpreting what I'm hearing, is do we want to have the discussion on this on April 20th, or do we want to have it before that? If I'm wrong, stick your hand up and say no.
I don't know if that's true.
Okay.
I don't know, and so that's why I was asking, like, if people have read or haven't read, like I personally don't actually think that we need to have a conversation about it, only because what I view and what we all make certain decisions, like this is potentially going to end up in litigation where someone could make those arguments, but like our stance, like if this is not going to be the final stance, if the community does not like what our stance is, they have other options.
They have other remedies. That's
remedies.
correct.
And so my point is, that's why I was asking individually, where do people are? Because if everyone today is like, no, I think this is okay, then I don't know that we actually need to have another
All
conversation.
right, sure, that's the third option, fair point.
It's very well said.
So I'm just trying to get a sense from the committee. Again, I'm not a committee member, I don't vote. I'm just here to help you kind of navigate the waters a little bit. I'm just looking for guidance in terms of, do you want to discuss this? I guess it kind of boils down to two decisions. One, do you want to discuss it, yes or no? And if the answer is no, we're done. If the answer is yes, we don't have to discuss it, do we want to discuss it on April 20th or at an earlier date?
So I have read the bond measure, I think, a while ago.
I read it last summer.
I felt like this was okay, but I think I'm gonna read it again. But right now, I feel like it's okay. I do want to have a discussion next meeting in April, just because I think that would put it on the. It would just give for the, just so that it's in the minutes, I guess.
I mean,
Yeah, of
it's a,
meeting,
yeah.
so that it's, the position is clear, but I'm personally okay with, not having a expert of the committee.
Well, I'll just say that in terms of the pros and cons of this, right? So if you think that the committee wants to weigh in, then it would be better to do it sooner rather than later because for the district. Because if we were to decide on April 20th that we do not believe that the expenditures are within the four corners, it would be a problem.
Yes.
Whereas if we could have that meeting in short order, then, and the committee came to that decision.
So I have a suggestion. So I think my position is clear about it. Maybe if any one of us, my suggestion is feels like they should have an expedited meeting, then we should have an expedited meeting.
100%.
That's my position. If any one of us says we should have an expedited meeting, then we should. I would be supportive.
Okay, so then can I make move that, can we then schedule a meeting to discuss this?
We can have a targeted meeting to discuss just this issue.
Just this.
But what Samir's saying is, if somebody here feels that way, but nobody's indicated that they feel that way.
Oh, but I thought Samir did.
No, I know.
Oh, you don't? Oh, got it. Yes, I agree with that position 100%.
It's just being
I
great.
don't, but I will support.
100%. I
If somebody
totally
wants
with
to
you.
have.
If any member of this committee would like an expedited meeting to discuss this issue, we should have the expedited meeting.
And then, at the risk of, again, breaking up the conversation, which is a good one, can I just ask for a show of hands, how many people think there needs to be a committee discussion on this issue? Any hands?
I would like to have it on the agenda for.
Okay, so you'd like to have it, based on that, do you want to have it on April 20th or have it earlier than that?
I think April 20th is fine for me, but I'm not an expert in this matter, so, but I think it does warrant a little bit more discussion.
I want to just throw a grenade across the table. Does any one of us think that our sending a letter to the board, to the school board, will help these citizens get more of their breathing space at the school at Delmar Heights?
I think that's a discussion that we would have to have at the targeted discussion. I think that discussion in terms of the action is going outside of our posted agenda.
I understand, but that's it.
I think what I would ask you to do, David, is, it sounds like we have one person who wants to do that, but we're talking April 20th. So is there any objection to bringing back the discussion of the Delmar Heights expenditures in light of Measure MM on April 20th? Is there any objection to that?
Say,
Yeah.
you're right.
Yeah, like that just kicks it down the can. Like if we think that this is something that needs to happen and it's a priority, then it would be, and then we should do it and we should have a conversation. Next week, exactly. So I would recommend next
Come in
week.
here, we can spend an hour, we can decide whether or not there's anything we can do.
And we get public comment and,
And we will have at least done
Something.
our minimum duty.
And that was my thing about April, because I
It's
personally
too late.
don't necessarily.
It's too late.
It's too late. It's too late. Because I don't think there's anything that we can do. I read the bond. I don't think that there's anything that we can do other than send a letter. But I don't think it's going to affect change. I don't think it's our lane. I don't think it's our jurisdiction. I just
Well,
don't.
again, your lane, if you will, is to say, we think this potential expenditure is outside of the boundaries of MM, and express your concern to the board. That's your lane.
I don't think that there's anything in the bond that we can complain about. That's my own personal opinion. relative
We
to
have,
the...
we have
We
one,
have-
we have
we
one
have
member who
requests.
says
We have
they
requests.
do want to discuss it.
Well, mine is not that I necessarily think it is, but I also agree with Samir that if this is a big contention with the community at large,
It is.
then it deserves some of our time that needs to at least discuss it and not just pass it over without even an agenda item. So that's my only thing, not that I believe it's, right, I mean.
Can I say, it seems to me that
because
since
I'm
we
not
don't
an
have
expert.
jurisdiction on
I'm
this
not an
basically.
expert on it,
Okay.
that's what I'm saying.
We
For
we
me,
just
it's-
had, we reached the hard stop at 7 o'clock. We had one member who has to go. Do we want to keep going with the discussion?
Yeah, I think it is.
I move we go for another 5 minutes.
Okay, well, you don't have to move. I know, I'm just curious. I mean, You guys run the meeting, I was just asking a question. So it sounds like you want to at least go for a little further along.
Kathy, what I want to say was that segment of the community, and maybe a large group, has had plenty of opportunities and to speak to the proper authorities that have had jurisdiction, the administrative staff and the principals and all that. And they've also made frequent representations to the board of trustees of the school district. And so, to me, those are the bodies that are, and I don't think we are. I just don't think we are. Because as I tried to say earlier, nobody's saying that there isn't the authority to spend money to do these things. What they're saying is, we want you to spend it in a different way. And that's not our area, and I just don't think we should be discussing it. But that's me.
And I honestly don't disagree. The only reason I even say that is because obviously there are still some discussions that the citizens want to have. And if we are a citizens oversight
Well,
committee.
understand, the Citizens Oversight Committee, let me go back to our orientation, which is the Citizens Oversight Committee is not up front of the train deciding which track to go
Right, we're on the
down, which
backside.
track. You're on the backside of the train.
Yeah.
So that being said, understand, your job is to look, as I said, my analogy, is the engineer sitting in the booth of the train. You're looking for stuff falling off the train. But in terms of which track you go down, how fast you go, what is the alignment of the cars, how is the train made up, that's for the governing board of the school district to decide.
I'm wondering if, I personally feel, after I've looked through the measurement bond language since hearing some of these things, and I do feel like it falls within the scope of the bond. I wonder if it is like part of our duty as representatives of the community to hear it out and hear from you why that is true. I don't know if that's like.
I think I agree with you. That's my only thing, not that I believe, because on purpose, the bond was written to incorporate a lot of different contingencies and it's a little bit open-ended and a little bit more general. So I don't personally think that it's outside the scope, but I do feel like our responsibility is still to maybe discuss it one more time to make sure that there isn't anything else. So that's I guess I am in agreement with Katie for that reason, not because I think it's outside the scope.
So I think I'm the only one who's, I don't know, I don't think I've seen any of you at the recent board meetings. So they have gone on until 9:30 and 10 and so it would be, I think back to Ira's point, it would be the same individuals who have come to present. And so we could have, we could, I mean, in some ways it wastes everybody's time because it's the same. So we could, if that's what you want to do, we could have another meeting, but I would just ask that we would have that meeting like next week as opposed to in April. But also, I don't know that what would the goal of it would be because I have personally attended those meetings and listened to the comments. So it's just, for me,
You have your decision made.
yeah. And it sounds like you do too. It sounds like everybody has. So I don't know, I don't want to be an advocate for not having the conversation, but it seems like if we're all in agreement and the only thing we're offering is public comment when all of the people have already made their public comments, I just wonder what the value of that is.
I think the value of it would be giving the district the opportunity to present to us, and I mean, as well as whomever is in attendance, you know, really according to the bond and according to like, you know, the funding, how it falls within the scope of the bond. Which maybe that's been
Okay,
handled in
well,
court.
okay,
And
that's fine, yeah.
I'm just saying, and quite honestly, I'm a busy person and I don't really like here for another meeting, but I want to make sure that we're doing what is.
At least a minimum meeting,
Yeah.
that's the only thing. And
We're playing devil's advocate with ourselves. It's like, well, is this our duty or should we hear it out? I didn't feel, because I hadn't attended the meetings to hear everybody speak, I didn't always feel like I knew all the issues, except that there was dissent about the fields, it sounds like right now. And that's really the only thing. If the district isn't going to be presenting us with any more information, then I think it would be a waste of all of our time.
so it's not necessarily the field, it's the green space. They're hanging on to the green space, white knuckle, because once it's gone, it's gone. And it'll be almost impossible to get it back, unless there's a miracle, and that's.
Okay, so
Well,
that, so I didn't,
I'm gonna try and, again,
Realize-
because the issue, really you back in, because the item isn't on the agenda, what we're really talking about is whether or not there should be a committee meeting on this topic, and if so, when. So if we can kind of, in terms of what comments are made, you know, that's something for the committee members can take into consideration. I'm trying to get us to the question, you know, again, this is your committee, I don't vote here, is whether or not this is a meeting you want to have or not.
I have a question. Are we
Yeah.
allowed to have, in this like special meeting, are we allowed to have no public commentary?
No. As soon as a meeting is held under the Brown Act, public
Yeah.
comment is mandatory, it's required.
So then I'm hearing that there is at least some members who want to have this special meeting. So maybe we could schedule this special meeting for 2 weeks. I'm hearing is that,
Well, let me ask you again, is it the desire of the committee to have a special meeting? I heard Kathy say yes.
can we do like the voting part of it?
If you'd like to.
Because I'll be a nay.
Okay, let me ask this, because meetings should get scheduled based upon the directive of the entire committee. How many members of the committee would like to have a special meeting on this topic? Hands up.
special meeting.
This will be before April 20th. How many committee members decline to do that? Hands up. Okay, I see 2 no votes, no yes votes. That means we're not doing it. Okay. Now, haven't gotten over that hurdle. If there is any member of the committee who would like to have a discussion on the Del Mar Heights expenditures on April 20th, which is our next scheduled meeting, send an email to staff and say, I would like to have this on there. Simple as that.
I guess I'm confused, because isn't that going to be, regardless, going to be a standing topic?
No, what we've got is we have the progress update on Measure MN. That's a standing item. You have the payment log. That's a standing item. You have overthrowing me, which is going to be a standing item as long as I'm sitting here. Okay? You're going to have your minutes. That'll be a standing item. You're going to have comments from committee members. The duration of the meetings we've covered. The contact information, hopefully we'll have sorted out by then. But again, if you'd like to see some other specific discussion, say, hey, Chris, you discussed, Del Mar Hills Academy. Can we have an agenda item to specifically discuss that? That's the kind of thing where you send an email to staff and say, I'd like to put this on the agenda. Because if we don't have it on the agenda, we can't do a long discussion. So I'm going to presume right now based upon what I'm hearing from the committee members, is we are going to have our meeting of April 20th. Unless we hear specifically from a committee member that you want a discussion on the Delmar Heights expenditures, that will not appear on the committee, on the agenda. But if you have any other items, such as Delmar Hills Academy, or gee, what's our look at the next 3 years, not just the next year and a half, to the extent staff knows, send an email to staff so that they know. Any other comments from the committee member? That was a real Pandora's box item. Any other discussion or comments from the committee? We're still on item L, leasing. Hearing none, then we're adjourned. We went over a little bit by 7:11. But that was a good discussion. Thank you all for coming. We all appreciate your service.
Any other assignments? Email your
Well, it's not everything, so I can't do it.
But I mean, that's up to you. Thank you.
Sometimes when you twist it, it feels like it's.
But I did not catch
I think they're gonna put our contact
You got it. Okay.
Instead of sending it out, walk with us, and